Hello and welcome to the Catch a Lift Coaches Corner. I am KL lead coach Melissa, and this week I am honored to welcome U.S. Navy veteran Anthony Semprun to today's show. Anthony is a retired Navy veteran, a student, and a KL veteran athlete. Welcome to this week's episode of Coaches Corner. Anthony, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're so excited to have you and talk to you. Let's jump right in today, Anthony, and talk a bit about your service. When did you enlist in the military and in what branch?
Yeah, I came in right after high school in 1986. I was on delayed entry, and so I had a couple of months right out of high school just to decide what I was going to do. And right after the summer, joined, and I was off.
That was right into a Navy enlistment, right, Anthony?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Why the Navy? What drove you to pursue that?
Great question. My at that time I really didn't have much of an influence besides of my grandfather was in the Navy in World War II, and he and I didn't speak much about the Navy per se, but my stepdad, who was he was the motivating factor behind my decision to get into the military. He was a Korean War vet in the Marine Corps, and he said, "Hey, why don't you look at go talk to a recruiter?" And honestly I laughed,
Yeah.
and I thought, no way, because I immediately thought about those ROTC guys in high school that I would make fun of. I'd walk by and I'd do a
Yeah.
horrible hand salute to them. And even though some were my friends, I would do
Yeah.
that. And I later thought about that, how stupid that was. But I thought, okay, Navy, Marine Corps, they were right next to each other. And the Navy offered more. They offered more jobs,
Okay.
and I found one that I liked, being a hospital corpsman.
Okay.
And that later I came to find out that I would end up being with the Marine Corps. So it was a mix. So my stepdad was happy. My grandfather, who
Yeah.
passed away while I was in boot camp, but I know that he was happy because
Yeah.
I got to get into the Navy and love it.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Um, can you talk to us, about those first kind of years in the Navy and what you were doing and, what those first few years brought for you?
Sure. Uh, as most people go through, that's the first couple of years, your training years. You're establishing you're getting your training under your belt. You're going to your basic schools. I went to the enlisted medical school, the hospital corpsman school, which is right across from the Navy boot camp. So you're really not getting that far out of boot camp, which
Right.
kind of sucked. But still, you get some freedom. And I went to that school, and then shortly thereafter, I went to Camp Pendleton, where I learned how to become a combat corpsman or field medic.
Okay.
And you get that job title, that specificity under your belt, so that later, at that time, not every corpsman had to go to that school. You just
Okay.
got selected randomly.
Okay.
And so, following that, I went to my first duty station, which was uh, a naval hospital, which a lot of corpsmen get stationed to get their medical training completed. And
Right.
I went to Naples, Italy, so
Oh,
I was
wow.
overseas right away.
Yeah.
But it was they I have my some of my best memories were from Naples, Italy. I had an incredible time. It was also a really challenging duty station because we had very limited supplies, and so you were always having to adapt to things,
Okay.
and it really had me thinking outside the box a lot. So I worked on a hospital ward, treating all kinds of patients. And once I got that down, I was ready for the next thing. So I
Yeah.
immediately moved on, and I went to the emergency room worked in the emergency room, and that led me into my next duty station, which was Camp Lejeune, and that's where I went. That's where Navy corpsmen, if people don't know it, Navy corpsmen, the Marine Corps doesn't have a medical department. They don't have a Marine that takes care of medical things.
Right.
So since the Marines don't like to hear this, but since the Marine Corps is a department of the Navy, uh, then the Navy pulls on, or the Marine Corps pulls on the Navy for medical support.
Right.
And the corpsmen that are trained to be with the Marine Corps go with the Marine Corps, and they stay with the Marine Corps in their independent units or their units, and they treat Marines. And that's what I did over at Camp Lejeune. And I was able to go on independent duty a lot because of my outstanding training in Naples, Italy, coincidentally, and go with a lot of different units that I was the only corpsman for several Marines, and it was really an outstanding opportunity. I loved it.
That is great. That's really interesting to hear too, how that all works. Thanks for sharing that, Anthony.
Yeah.
So it would be a number of years later, but you would go on to deploy to Iraq. Could you talk to us about, that deployment, what your job was there, what the mission was?
Sure. Originally, I started out a reservist. I joined the reserves at the beginning of the Gulf War. I'd had a break in service, and then I was with an air wing. I was with the Marine Corps again, the air wing of the Marine Corps, and I was mobilized for a year, and I was sent to Camp Pendleton. I'm sorry, Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, and I was attached to a squadron that takes care of. Basically, it's a logistical squadron that it's kind of like a garage for helicopters.
Okay.
You send your helicopter there, and they fix them, the
Yeah.
mechanics or the wrench turners. And so I was going to be a corpsman that supported those mechanics that fix the helicopters. But my job changed because of that training I had.
Yeah.
I've always been a motivated person, but they saw that my leadership saw that and said, "Hey, would you like to be part of this group that's going to be uh, working to? You actually will be on a helicopter. It's called Casualty Evacuation. The Army does it now, but because of Fallujah and other things,
Right.
we need help. We need to help the Army. You'll be flying in, point of injury, someone gets hurt, IED blast, whatever the case, someone gets shot, they call in, you're first on, we
Okay.
fly you in there, you're dropped off, you stabilize, you transport, and then you're off to your next one." And I thought that's an awesome opportunity. I'd
Yeah.
love to do that. So they put me in charge of that group and to train the incoming corpsmen that they called in from around the Navy, from around the world, actually, from different duty stations. And that's what I did. And then a couple months later, we deployed, and I was back and forth from Altacadam, which is a point where we deployed the casualty evacuation team. I was there and Al Assad, so I was at two different places. I had logistics and I had administrative things that I had to do, and then I was back flying missions as well.
Okay.
So uh, that's essentially what I did.
What year was that, Anthony?
2004.
2004. Okay.
Yeah,
Um, so we've got a little bit of a taste there, what you were doing, is that casualty evacuation. Could you kind of walk us through, and I use the word typical very loosely because nothing in war is typical,
right.
but what was kind of a typical day like for you doing that job? What did it look like?
Sure. Well, there were what we called milk runs, which were transport of a patient from one place to another, which typically the patient was stable. We would get a call, we would fly to one location, pick up a patient, fly him to another, but they needed medical attention and they needed someone by them, around them, to care for them while we transported them. And then there'd be another where we would get a call, the bell would ring, we would run out to the bird. It would be ready to go. We'd jump on, we'd go, we'd fly, um, and uh, we would some of the details. We would have our patches on, but we would take them off. Sterilize is what we called it.
Okay.
We take our patches off in case our bird went down. We didn't want to be identified.
Right. Okay.
We'd run out there. A lot of the shifts I did were at night, so they were like 7 to 7, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Right. Okay.
We'd get out, we'd fly, have our night vision goggles on, and then we'd fly to wherever. Uh, we'd get some kind of word on the comm about what we were going to, and then the pilot would ask what kind of level it would be, whether I needed to get to whatever hospital really quick or if it was kind of a non-emergency or depending
Yeah.
on what I found. But I would get out, I would take a look at the corpsman on the ground or the medic would, they always did also a great job at, uh, we call it packaging, no disrespect, but they
Right.
would they would do a great job in having the patient at some level of ready to transport, and then I would get if I needed to do more care than I would, and then I would take the patient and we would go, and based on the level of need, we would move faster or at a regular flight
Right.
speed, but I would render care based on the necessity. If someone was bleeding out, then I would obviously do a tourniquet, or I would. So depending on what the need was, I would assess that and I would do it. And the important thing was to get, you've heard of the golden hour.
Yeah.
Uh, you would the most important thing was to control bleeding, because
Yeah.
if you didn't control bleeding, it didn't make sense to do CPR. Why do CPR if they're going to bleed out?
Yeah.
So the most important thing was to control bleeding. That was it. So you stop bleeding and then you go on. Um, Really, it was a rush to get him to the next
Yeah.
hospital, and so we would land to the next hospital. We would get out, and I would tell the nurse what the situation was as we were getting out, and then I would sometimes walk into the hospital with them to tell the doctor what was going on, and then I get back in and we'd leave, and on to the next thing. So that was typically what happened.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that with us and kind of walking us through that.
Sure.
Anthony, during your time in Iraq, um, there would be a day where you were hit by a suicide bomber. Would you tell us about that event and what happened that day?
Yeah. Um, I it was an off day. I was doing administrative work. I was out. I don't remember exactly what I was doing at the moment, but I remember just feeling the ground shake, and then I felt this. I felt something coming towards me. It was the strangest feeling, but I can. What I say when I tell people is that if you've ever been at a concert and you've been by the speaker, you can feel
Yeah.
the frequency, or you can feel those uh, you can feel the decibels, or you can
Yeah.
feel the music almost go through you.
Yeah.
That's what I felt. I felt that sensation, and that was the blast of the. There had been just a little history. There had been a suicide bomber that pulled up to our position by our location, and he detonated his truck and killed several people. And as soon as that went off, it just the subsequent blast just went out, and it affected, as we know more now about
Right. Yeah.
secondary and tertiary blasts. They affect people, and so after that happened, I, I was immediately the there was a call over the speaker about treating patients, and that's the first thing we did was we
Yeah.
went to go treat who was left alive, and there was only like one or two people. Um, and as soon as I went to go to that person, um, they immediately casevaced them to a different location, so I wasn't even available, or I wasn't even able to treat that patient. So I went back to uh, where I birthed, where I lived, and the following days, I had headaches, nausea, um, just yeah, I didn't feel right,
Yeah.
and I thought, maybe maybe it's I haven't had enough coffee. I'm having these caffeine headaches. I tried to rationalize it
Yeah.
somehow, and it didn't. It never made sense, and it wasn't until later that, um, actually years later, that I had an episode where I had been back from deployment. I was sitting in front of a computer and I got really dizzy and I stood up and I was more dizzy.
Yeah.
I went to the VA and they treated me and they said, "Oh, well, you're going to here, take this." I gave them my history and they said, "Well, take this Valium and this should make you feel better." And I said, "Well, I won't be able to work when I take it."
Yeah.
And they said, "No, but it should make you feel better." And I took it, and of course, I was out.
Yeah.
Um, but later, I went through the protocol for a TBI. And by the way, I'd never been screened for a TBI. And I had an exam. They looked at me and they said the final diagnosis was that it had been too long since I had had that blast injury for me to still be suffering symptoms. And so they wrote it off. The VA did. Yeah.
Uh,
And so I thought to myself, well, and because of my medical background, I thought, well, I'm going to have to figure this out myself.
yeah.
I'm going to, uh, and I was having vertigo, and I didn't have any inner ear problems, uh, and I was having trouble speaking. I was having forgetfulness. It was the strangest thing. And so finally, I was at a I was at a race for Wounded Warriors or something, and I saw this booth to the side. You know how they have sponsors and
Right.
things, and it said Center for Brain Health. And I went over to them and I said, uh, they told me something about a study they did, and that they need participants. And I said, "Do you do MRIs when you do your studies?" And they said, "Oh yeah, we sure do." And they told me that their studies are free. And so I thought, well, why don't I do this? And then maybe they can do an MRI and then
Right.
maybe we can see if there's any issue there. And so we did. And they did an MRI. And as soon as they finished with the MRI, uh, I was I was in an office doing something else at the Center for Brain Health in the middle of the study. We had yet gotten to the part where we actually do the protocol for the study,
Right.
and the doctor or the psychiatrist came in and led me to the neurologist room and said, or the director of the study, and he told me that they found something on my MRI that I could no longer do the study because of what they found on the MRI. And uh, they said that it's obvious that you have had some brain injury, and we need to send you to this neurologist so that you can be treated.
Yeah.
And so the a couple days later, I was next door at Southwestern University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center, and they diagnosed me with the TBI. And then I was at another doctor the next day, and they put me through tests, and it was clear. And so it sounds weird, but I was happy of
Yeah.
the diagnosis. I was happy
Right.
for that
Right.
diagnosis because it justified
Absolutely.
what
Yes.
I was going through. So that's it. Kind of a long story, but that's what happened.
You know, I'm so sorry you had to go through that on the front end with the VA. Unfortunately, we both know, that's not an isolated case, with you,
Right.
what happened there. But I'm so glad, that you were able to go and find people that were able to, give you answers and get you moving in a forward direction.
And for anybody that's going through that, uh, I would say that the most important thing is that to not take no, to not take no, you don't have this. Don't take that. First of all, don't feel bad about yourself.
Yeah.
Don't say, "Oh, well, I was wrong. I this and that."
Yeah.
Go to somebody else. Go to another doctor. Go to another medical professional, and have them look at you. Get a second opinion, and then get that documentation, and then have it substantiated. Have it looked at. Have it qualified. Because too many times people just say, "Ah, screw the VA." Oh,
Yeah.
they don't.
Yep.
But these are your medical rights you're fighting for,
Oh,
and they're
absolutely.
they're
Yeah.
they're so important because and it's not just this little case that you're fighting for just to say, hey, I got this. Uh, they've acknowledged it. It's not for just this little point in time. It's for future. It's for the future because if something happens later
Yep.
and you're married and something happens to you and it's because of this situation,
Right.
it's because of that illness or injury, you're covered.
Yeah.
Because if you don't fight for it and you're not covered, then your wife is stuck or your family's
Yep.
stuck without that injury being covered and they're on their own. So it's so worth fighting for it. And it's so worth staying and being persistent about fighting for it. It's not just about getting monetary
Yeah.
compensation. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Even though that is nice, but it's the principle of getting
Yeah.
it, and it's about covering having your family covered for the future.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And thank you for making that point too. That's 100% correct. Anthony, can you and you obviously had a lot going on during this period, but can you talk to us a little bit about transitioning out of the military and what that looked like for you coming out?
Yeah, I think the military does a. I'm sure they've done better, but they do a horrible job at. They're just not equipped
Yeah.
to to do it. Their transition brief is a joke. They try to say, well, here's what you'll need in order to get a job, or here's what it just doesn't translate. Their idea of a transition does not translate to real world. Um, so my transition was from deployment to reality, being a reservist at the time, because I have both active and
Yep.
reserve, but especially being a reservist was horrible. It was horrible because within I had 30 days leave after my mobilization. I had 30 days leave after, so I had terminal leave, and then I was back at work 2 weeks later. So I was in a I was in the strangest state where I
Yeah.
couldn't relate, and I know everybody watching and listening can relate to this. I was in a different place.
Yeah.
I couldn't relate to what these people were talking about. I was at my job. I was a home builder. I was at my job thinking, what are these people talking about?
Yeah.
Why are they focused on these stupid,
Yeah.
ridiculous things when my brothers and sisters are out there fighting, and that's what really matters.
Right.
And so that was I was in a deep dark place, and I was just looking for anybody. I even tried to go back to my reserve unit, but immediately I knew that if you hadn't
Yeah.
been in combat, I couldn't relate to you, and I
Yeah.
immediately sought psychiatric help because I could not relate. And I told the commanding officer, I told the colonel that because I was once again I was with the Marine Air Wing. I said, get ready for get ready for some of your Marines to come back with some mental
Yeah.
issues, because this is they're not going to tell you because they're macho, but I'm telling you now, that there are going to be some issues, because
Yeah.
uh, this is transitioning from a reservist back into the civilian world,
Oh, yeah.
from combat to work. It's not happening.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Anthony, and pointed this out. So I was a National Guard soldier, and when I got home, I can relate to this very much. We did
Absolutely.
our demobilization process, and we were literally turned loose 6 weeks before we would even see our unit again to turn some more gear in. Um, and it was so surreal. It wasn't even like I was on in a military post or anything.
Mhm.
Just literally, my parents picked me up from the
Yeah.
demob at Fort McCoy, Wisconsin, and what do I do now? I
Yeah.
had literally no idea. And then obviously subsequently went through a extremely difficult transition, but I don't think it's not talked about a lot, the transition of National Guard reservists and what that actually looks like in real time when you get home from a combat zone.
Right.
It's a very, very scary time for many, many reasons. So thank you for bringing that up.
Sure. Yeah, you're right. It's not talked about, and
No.
people look at. I mean, active duty. I used to do the same thing. Look at reservists and guards, guardsmen and guards. I don't know the term, but
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
guard, as oh, they're just like weekend warriors, whatever. They're
Yeah.
really not in, but no, they are.
Yeah.
Um, at least I took it seriously when I was a reservist. No one can tell that
Absolutely.
I was a reservist because
Yep.
I'm motivated, but still, it's such a different reality for us because, like you said, you're turned loose, and,
Yeah.
and you are. You don't come back to a welcoming family of people that have just
Yep.
been there or understand. It's not a community. You have a community, but it's not a community of veterans. It's a community of people that have gone on with their lives, working, doing what they do. But all of a sudden, you're a stranger in that
Yeah.
community, and that is it gives me chills. It's
Yeah.
a
I
weird.
know.
It is you don't want to be that. You don't want
No.
to be in there, and you search like I did. You search for someone that's been in that situation, and I was calling people that I knew that had been in that situation to commiserate, like, hey, do you feel this?
Yeah.
Are you going through what I am going through? Are you? And at the time, people were not. It hadn't settled in, and for
Right.
some, it didn't settle in for like 2 or 3 years.
Yep. Exactly.
And
Exactly.
it all affects us differently.
Yes.
But it took a while, and then they acknowledged. Yeah, what you were talking about that year, you called me on Christmas Eve. Yeah, that, holidays they're always a little weird that time. I always think back to what I was
Yes.
doing in Iraq at that
Myself
time.
too. Yeah.
One more
Oof.
thing, do you section your time, your like life events as pre and post deployment?
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Yes. Yep. It's for myself, I use it to mark time, right?
yes,
And so right, it was everything that happened before Iraq and then kind of everything after.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow.
Anthony, the first time you and I talked, you said something that really really struck me, and just for my own reasons, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on it these past couple weeks since we talked, and you told me you can't stay in your pity party. Could you kind of talk to us a little bit about that mentality and, pushing forward with life, post injury, post service, and what that's looked like for you?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I think we all it feels good to have a pity party regardless of what you want to say on the outside or what you want to show, but it feels good to have a little pity party for yourself, uh, but it gets old and it's not productive. And you that the same person that graduated from boot camp, all of us, the same person that has reached goals in the military and beyond, is the person that's sitting on the couch or drinking or doing whatever and is saying, this is getting old. I'm more than this.
Yeah.
And um, I, I did that, and I went through that. And I, I owed it to my family, and I owed it to myself to be a better me. That kind of sounds corny, but just
Yeah.
and I'm so glad that Catch a Lift came into my life, because I was able to being being active was so it
Yeah.
has always been part of my life. And when I talked to she Lynn Coughlin, for everybody that doesn't know who I'm talking about out there, but when she came into my life and talked to me about these things that were available, uh, it gave me, when I got my weights, I wasn't ready to go outside. I wasn't ready to go
Yeah.
to a gym. I still don't do the gym thing. But when I got my weights, I was so happy that I could, at least on this one point, I could physically get better and I could be physically productive,
Yeah.
which to me, that was everything. Okay.
Yeah.
Or it was the catalyst, I should say.
Yes.
It was the
Absolutely. Yep.
catalyst, and I could do that, and it just opened things up. And that feeling sorry for myself, it's like, I've always I run a lot and I love it. I always have run, and I tell people that I don't care about what you used to run. Tell me what you ran today.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
I feel the same way, about other things. I don't care anybody can say, oh yeah, I used to do this. Well,
Oh yeah, totally.
what have you done
Totally.
today?
Yep.
So I feel that, and
Yeah.
I think that's important.
That is.
What have you done today?
Yeah.
And
Ab-
I'm not super productive every day. I'm the first to say it. Some days I just have blah days, and I'm lazy. But I do. I've gotten so much better. I've
yeah.
I've produced more than I used to. And if
Yeah.
we can do that on a tiny level, and then just do more and more each day, we're on the road to getting better.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You just kind of keep building off of that, you
Yeah.
know. Absolutely. So let's talk about catch a lift some more, Anthony. How did you become a catch lift athlete? How did you hear about the organization and in what year was it?
Oh, I don't even know what year it was, to be honest. Let's see. It's 2020, so I'm thinking prior to 2015,
Okay.
um, is a good guess. Uh, but I I I think it was on the internet that I heard something. Either the internet, or it may have been an event that I went to,
Yeah.
or a combination thereof.
Right.
Whatever the case, I immediately checked into it, and I was blown away that this was offered. I thought, no
Yeah.
way. And as soon as I found out what was offered, uh, I I I jumped on it. I
Yeah.
jumped on it, and when I got a bench and I got free weights, and I couldn't have been happier.
That's
And
terrific.
yes, and so, and I was just using them before we got on.
Nice.
It's so
Yeah.
great to just be able to go into my other room and get on them at any time of the
Yeah.
day and not have to ask permission, not have to wipe a bench down, not have to, turn
Yeah.
lights on and off or do whatever. It's just, I love that freedom. It's just,
Yeah.
but and so I also got another piece of equipment that my wife and I both use. It's a stationary bike, and that has been it's been great. It's been great. It's great for my warm ups
Yeah.
for running. My wife uses it all the time. She actually wore a pedal out.
That's
If you
awesome.
can believe
Yeah.
it, yeah. So I just replaced that. So anyway, it's and Lynn has been she has been incredible. She has been incredible. I can't say enough about her. She's taken time to call me directly and just if I've had a hard time, she's called
Yeah.
and just uh, sat there and listened to me and just been a great friend. And
Yeah.
so she's gone above and beyond what your mission statement is, and that means the world to me. And I've always told her if there's anything that I can do to give back, I will, and I always will, because you
Yeah.
guys mean so much to me.
No, absolutely. Anthony, and it's funny, how you talk about Lynn. I'm sure we could get hundreds and hundreds of veterans that would come on and say that. It's so interesting because she does. She's not back behind a screen and you never see her. She leads with such heart, and tenacity, and she's out there with the veterans. She's calling them directly, she's emailing them, she's texting them. It's a truly remarkable thing. I don't know of another organization such as this where you'd be talking with the president like that, right? Like the
Right.
president of an organization call you up, and it just doesn't happen. So um, we're certainly all incredibly blessed to have Lynn and Catch a Lift in our lives. I know that. I want to talk to you a little bit more, Anthony, too, about your fitness. Because I know you love to run, you love to lift. What's what's kind of a normal week of training look like for you? How do you kind of structure it, or what kind of work do you like to get done in a week?
Yeah. Uh, as far as running, it depends on what I'm training for.
Yeah.
I just did. I just on a low mileage for a low mileage race, like a 10K. I just did one for Veterans Day, and
Oh,
so
nice.
that's just that's kind of like a for a training week. That's like a anywhere from 3 to 4 miles. Uh, every other day. That's what it would look like. In a longer run, maybe an hour on the weekend for a longer run, and then as it builds on Thanksgiving, every Thanksgiving I do 8 miles,
Okay.
regardless. We have a turkey trot here in Dallas that's huge, and I haven't done it in years and years, and I don't because it's so commercialized
Yeah.
and there's no parking
Oh man,
and
I'm sure. Yeah.
it takes forever to start. It starts at like 9 in the morning, which is too late,
Yeah.
But anyway, and there's 50,000 people or something. It's ridiculous. So I decided one year, it was like, why do I have to go there and run 8 miles when I can do it here? And so
Heck
I've been
yeah.
doing that ever since. So um, that's what I'll do. I hope I had some surgeries earlier this year. I had a couple of them, and so I'm recovering from those. I mean, I'm not. I consider myself fully recovered, but I'm still catching up on miles,
Yeah.
so I'm not back where I should be. So the 8 miles is going to be a little bit past my comfort at this
Okay.
point,
Yeah.
but it's doable. It'll be fine. So what is that, like a week and
Yeah.
a day from
Yeah.
today? Yeah.
Good.
So I'll do it. So I'm not worried about it. But as far as the lifting, um, I don't have a set schedule. I just go in there and it's like, okay, I need to do buys and
Yeah.
tries. I'll hit those. I
Yep.
do, my chest. I do shoulders and back. And so I just kind of do as is.
Yeah.
When I was in the military, I had like certain days, but now I'm a little bit more, I'm not so structured on okay, this day, da, 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 da.
Yeah.
So, um,
Okay.
but that's what I like because I don't have to be, because I don't
Right.
have to
Yep.
get out because I'm on because there's other dudes
Yeah.
and whatever having to crowd the bench. I can do it whenever. So
Yeah.
that's nice.
Yeah, that's totally one of the huge perks of training at home like that, having that home gym. So that's terrific. You have that opportunity.
Yes. And then when guests come over, I say, hey, go for it. Use it, you
Yeah,
know? Yeah.
that's
Oh, and I have
awesome.
TRX bands. Those
Oh
are
man,
incredible. Yeah.
can do everything with them.
Yes.
Absolutely
Yes.
everything. Yeah,
Yes. And even
that's
things I
awesome.
don't want to do.
Yeah. There's a lot of
Those
that
are
too, right?
hard.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to get your butt kicked in 10, 15 minutes. Oof.
Yeah. By two
Yeah.
straps. Yeah.
For sure. For sure. Anthony, I want to talk to you some about going back to school.
Mhm.
Um, so what drove you to go back to school and study political science?
Oh, I, you know, I didn't finish my degree, and and my daughter just started school this she's 18, and she just started school this fall as a freshman in college. And it's always bugged me. It's always, I've been to school. I mean, I got out of school like 25 years ago, and I got bored with it actually. And I didn't fail out. I just got bored and I wanted to do other things, but whatever the case, I didn't stick with it. And I thought, well, I have this opportunity. I have the time,
Yeah.
and there's just no reason why I shouldn't try and do this, or at least take some classes.
Right.
And this isn't the degree plan that I originally started. So maybe some things will have to be taken again, and I chose political science because I love politics. I didn't love it back when I started
Yeah.
25 years ago. I was I liked kinesiology then, but now I like political science. So, and most importantly, I love the history of the United States.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I'm learning so much even in this first class,
Oh, I
that more
bet.
than I've ever known before. I'm learning after the fourth week. I'm in the fourth week now.
Oh, terrific.
So yeah, yeah. So it's a lot of paper writing, which one of the first things I said was, "Oh, I hope I don't have to write a lot of papers." But that's all I'm doing. That's all I'm
Yeah.
doing. Yeah, but
S-
hey, such
What
is
has
life.
it, I mean, what has it kind of been like, so 25 years since you were last in kind of a formal schooling like that.
Yeah.
What's it been like for you to be back and kind of submerged again in education and schooling?
It's a lot. It's a lot different
Yeah.
because I'm looking at a screen for everything. The only thing that's similar is that I'm taking notes in a notebook with a pen. And I don't even have to do that. I mean, I can just highlight on the text that I'm reading and it
Yeah.
stores it. And then when I go
It's
back to
crazy.
that textbook, I can see what I've highlighted. And that's even impressive to me. I mean,
That's
that blows
crazy.
my
Yeah.
mind. And
Right?
so I can just go back and study that. And so I really don't even need to write down anything in my spiral, as
Yeah.
we used to call it. So it's a lot different. And one of the biggest things is not talking to the professor. Now, that's something that we used to do all the time. But that was also school. That was also in person. I'm doing it online. So that's kind of what you get. So the only communication is via email. And,
Okay.
uh, we've I've sent the guy 2 emails, and it's been just,
Yeah.
real quick responses and nothing personal, just,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's the difference.
Okay. What school are you in, Anthony?
I'm in Liberty.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a Christian college in Lynchburg, Virginia. If
Okay.
anybody's looking at doing online, they have a military discount. It's huge. It's $250 per credit hour,
Oh,
which
wow.
is really, really good.
Yeah.
And it's a great school. It's one of the best private schools you can do online.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've enjoyed it, and they're great. I mean, and I don't get paid by them, but they have scholarships available, especially if you're disabled.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us, Anthony.
Yeah,
I have one more question I want to kick out to you today before we
yeah,
finish up here. Looping back to Catch a Lift, because I
yeah.
know they've had a tremendous impact on your life. So, what does it mean to you today, Anthony, to kind of reflect back and look at your time with KL, and what does it mean to you to be a Catch a Lift Fund veteran athlete?
Oh, um, it's uh, it's huge because being able to. I think the biggest thing is being able to tell other people about it. Um, Being able to, people come to my house, and they'll see the equipment. They're like, "Wow, what's this? How did you get this?" And
Yeah,
and I'm able to tell them and say, "This is something that's available to you." And they're like, "Really? How?" And then I get to say that,
yeah,
I get to spread the word, and I get to tell them about what Coach's Corner. I get to tell them about the website, and I get to tell them about all the things that are offered, and how awesome that is. And it's because you're a veteran, and they're as blown away as I was in the
yeah,
beginning, and
absolutely.
continue to be. And so it's so meaningful. I mean, it's been a real. I mean, there are a lot of veterans groups and
Yeah,
organizations out there, but you guys are like top two in my
yeah,
book. Really, it's just for really number one in what you do. Honestly, really number one, because it's you you stay involved, you're committed, and you do what you say what you're going to do. and,
yeah,
and to me, that's everything.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anthony, for, sharing with us today. And more than anything, thank you for your service to our great country.
Same to you. My honor.
Thank you. That's it for this week's episode of Coach's Corner. We will return next week at 1 Eastern Time with another new episode. Thank you, Anthony, again for sharing your story and your light with us today. Thank you to ID Technology for your continued support of all things Catch a Lift. A huge thank you to one of our newest sponsors, ClearBridge, for your support of all things Catch a Lift. A huge shout out and thank you to Lynn Coughlin, Henry Pomper, Kaylee Nasiri for your work to make this podcast possible. And a huge thank you to the entire Catch a Lift team. Until next week, keep it real and stay Kale strong.